Good morning and Happy New Year. There it is. I confused you. Yes.
I love it.
Bringing the energy into 2023. Thank you, Archer. Hey, good to see you all this morning in person or online. We would love if you would rise or stand as you're comfortable and join us in singing this morning.
Hear the angels sing, there's hope for everyone to announce our King. There's hope for everyone. What good news they bring. There's hope for everyone. Angels sing, there's hope for everyone. They came from afar. There's hope for everyone. Wise men saw the star. There's hope for everyone. Shepherds heard the choir. There's hope for everyone. From afar, there's hope for everyone. We are waiting on the promise for the one who lights the darkness. And we know to be among us. Bring your glory in the highest, Jesus. Come, let us adore. There's hope for everyone on the manger floor. There's hope for everyone. When you wait for there's hope for everyone. Come adore. There's hope for everyone. We are waiting on the promise for the one who lights the darkness. We know to be among us. Your glory in the highest, Jesus. Coming on the clouds, there's hope for everyone. Hear the trumpet sound, there's hope for everyone. On the heaven shouts, there's hope for everyone. On the clouds, there's hope for everyone. We are waiting on the promise for the one who lights the darkness. Lord of the among your glory in the highest, Jesus. All of heaven shouts, there's hope for everyone. Heaven shouts, there's hope for everyone. Heaven shouts, there's hope for everyone. Heaven shouts, there's hope for everyone.
Thank you for joining us and singing with us this morning. You can actually have a seat.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Great to have you back up here, kids. My name's Jeremy. I'm the pastor here of the Grove, Cottage Grove, and it is so good to be with you on this New Year's morning. The few, the proud, the brave, you rolled out of bed this morning. You started your New Year's on a high note. Hopefully it'll be on a high note. One of the things we say here around the Grove is the right people show up. And even though this is a holiday morning, we've got fewer people than usual, the right people have shown up. So we are very excited that you are here with us today. We're a brand new church that seeks to grow goodness. And so we hope that your being here today or you're watching with us online, wherever you're at, is nurturing some healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life.
Hi, my name is Miranda. I am a member here at the Grove, and I'd like to bring everybody's attention to the packet here. If you're new with the Grove, there's a form on the inside, or if you've been here a while and you still want to give us some more information, on the back there's some things that you might be wanting to engage with in the Grove, just some info about you. There's a basket in the back that you can put them in. That same basket is also where you can give to the Grove. There are a couple different ways you can give. We do Venmo. Again, you can put donations in that back there as well. Yeah.
On the back, we usually have the announcements, the most important things to know for the month ahead. Well, guess what? This is a brand new, not only year, but new month, and you can just throw the back. Like, these announcements no longer mean anything. But we do have new announcements. They're not on here. 2 things to know that are coming up. First of all, what order do I have them in? Go ahead, Banana. Beautiful Mess. We are kicking off a new series next week where we are talking about some heroes of the faith, heroes that are included in the Bible. They're complete messes of lives and stories and how they somehow still became heroes that we can celebrate. As a part of that too, every week we have someone who's a part of the Grove who is going to share their own story of messiness of faith. One of the things that we say about the Bible is that it is not, it's not a collection of things to know or things to do, but it's a collection of stories that show what real faith looks like in all of its messiness. So we're going to dive into those and then have examples of people from our very church sharing their own messy stories. So we hope you will join us for that. And then the second announcement, something that's coming up, is next week you are invited to the Grove's birthday party. This week, 2 days from now, will be a year from our first ever weekly worship service. So I say every week this is a brand new church. We are less new than we were a year ago, which is super exciting. So immediately following worship, we are going to have cupcakes available and just another opportunity for you to hang out, have some good food, and enjoy some good company. Again, we hope that you will not only come for worship, but then stay after for that.
If you can tell, kids are a huge part of the Grove. We got them all lined up here in front. Normally the kids will go out for godly play, not today. So they are going to be in the worship with us. There's a little space over there where they can quietly play, air quotes. And then there's coloring books and things like that that will keep them entertained. There's also a daycare or a nursery, that's the word.
Not a daycare.
Not a daycare, nope. A nursery, it is not staffed today, but it is open, so if you do want to take any of the littles in there, feel free.
And we have the live stream going in there.
And there's a
so
live
you don't have to
stream
miss
going
out on what's happening in the room while being out of the room.
Yeah, and then, that's about it with kids today. I think then the next thing is
Connection point.
There we go. So every week we do a connection point, and this week's question is, what is one thing you hope for this year? And it can be something super minuscule, like I hope I get a pair of tennis shoes I've always wanted. I hope my sports team wins. It could be something much deeper you hope your connections end up better, or the job that you've always wanted you get. So anything like that. And
so this is the introvert's
Yes.
least favorite part of the service, is what I call it. So we encourage you to stand up, find somebody next to you that you don't know or don't know very well, and then we give you this prompt so that you can introduce yourself and then discuss this question. All right?
what he said.
And we'll reconvene in just a couple minutes, just when the awkwardness is starting to get thick. All right, go for it.
your spots. We'll continue to sing together. You guys might have noticed our Christmas tree over here covered in ornaments that were made by people in this church over the last month. They contain in them some fun stuff like pom-poms and stickers and stuff. And also, people wrote down on a piece of paper a hope that they had, sort of an area of their life where they were feeling like it wasn't really feeling like a blessing from God, but they have hope that God would one day turn it into a blessing. And so our hope in creating these ornaments wasn't just to have a fun activity to decorate our Christmas tree here, but was so that people can take those home, hold on to them, pack them up with your Christmas ornaments at home, and next year, when people open up their box of ornaments, they'll pull it out and say, oh yeah, this was this thing I was hoping for a whole year ago. Let's see what it was. And then you can kind of reflect back on the last year and see how God's been at work. Pretty cool. So if you made an ornament, or if your child made an ornament, if you can remember which one is yours, I invite you to come up at any time during the worship before you go today and grab those ornaments, take them home with yours. All right, that's it.
Also, I am just remembering now, because we have these poinsettias up on stage, if you purchased a poinsettia in memory of someone in your family or friends or whatever, not right now. Today would be a great time for you to grab them and bring them with you, because we're going to be flipping things out pretty quick here, because Christmas is over. No, it is not. Christmas is not yet over. We will talk about that in just a minute. New Year's, though. This is New Year's Day, of course, New Year's morning, and this is a time where we often make this mental pivot. There's nothing that's different about today that wasn't the same yesterday, but we make this mental pivot and we start looking ahead, looking forward to things to come, things that we might be anticipating or hoping for or wanting to do. And yet I often find myself on this day looking back instead and thinking about where I've come from and what I have done and how I might be able to do things differently. And one of the things as a parent that we have tried to work on going forward is helping our kids to make healthy food choices and providing them with opportunities, specifically around whole foods, like actually giving them food to eat, vegetables and fruits and things. There was a period of several years growing up, as I look back at my own experience, where every single day for lunch, at least on school days, I ate a Cheese Whiz sandwich on white bread. That's it. 2 pieces of white bread, Cheese Whiz in between. Every single day. I survived. I'm here. I made it. But it wasn't the most nutritious thing for me to be able to eat. And so as we have thought about how can we look back at where we've come from and do better going forward, we have tried to provide our kids with some of those options. So we put things on their plates that they might not choose for themselves. They are not quite as enticing maybe as like dinosaur chicken nuggets or mac and cheese. Broccoli, cauliflower, green beans. Those are the things that we like plop on their plates. They know exactly what it is. This doesn't include the things that we sneak into their food as we're making them, like spinach. We make these quesadillas where they call it the green cheese. We just mix in spinach with the cheese so it looks green. I think they've figured it out by now. So the spinach, onions, they don't like onions, but we put onions in things, whether they're aware of it or not. And then there's this new thing that I've been using in some baked goods called aquafaba. Anybody know what aquafaba is? Yeah, that gets back there. Know what aquafaba is. You can Google it if you don't know what it is. But it's like sneaking some things in and putting it right on their plates even. The idea is that if we give them the opportunity or exposure to something, that they might end up choosing a healthy choice for themselves. One of the things that my wife, who does feeding therapy, often says, because they're not as enticing as like dinosaur chicken nuggets or barbecue chips or mac and cheese, they don't look as good on your plate, she will say, you're tasting them with your eyes. Try to taste them with your mouth because you might be surprised what you find. Does that always work? No, it does not always work. But more often than not, actually, often our kids who are not big kids try these things, finally get to the point where they taste them with their mouths rather than with their eyes, and they realize this thing, which seemed unappealing or even disgusting, is actually full of goodness that I couldn't have anticipated. I have to tell our kids to stop eating green beans and eat their pizza. which was never a conversation that I had growing up. So hopefully by us looking back, we're able to look forward and do better going forward, embracing something that we once would have thought didn't fit and now are finding that it's full of goodness. So that's what we're trying to do in this season too, as we start to pivot away from Christmas, although Christmas is not done yet. You know this? In the church, yes. Thank you, Amanda. In the church calendar, in the traditional church calendar, we have Advent. Advent is this period leading up to Christmas. Advent means the arriving or the coming, and so it's this period leading up to Christmas of several weeks where we're anticipating with excitement about the arrival of Christmas and about the arrival of Jesus, and that ends at Christmas Eve. When the sun goes down on Christmas Eve, Advent ends. Then we move into Christmas. Christmas is not just Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the traditional church calendar. Christmas Eve, the end of Christmas Eve, begins a short period known as Christmastide. You might better know it as the 12 days of Christmas. Okay? The 12 days of Christmas come after Christmas. The 12 days of Christmas, then, do not end with 12 drummers drumming. The 12 days of Christmas end with Epiphany. How many of you are familiar with Epiphany? The day or the holiday even of Epiphany. Okay, a handful of you. Growing up, I had no idea what Epiphany was. I didn't know what Epiphany was until just a handful of years ago. Epiphany is the day on which some people celebrate Epiphany and say this is when we celebrate and recognize Jesus' baptism. But given that it also has an alternative name, which is Three Kings Day, Epiphany is usually the celebration of the wise men coming to Jesus and is the revealing of God in Jesus to the Gentiles or the non-Jews. So there's Advent, which means the arriving or the coming of God, and then on the other side of Christmas we have Epiphany, which means the revealing. And so today we're going to go back to that very familiar story about three wise men rolling up to Israel, rolling up to little toddler Jesus, and we're going to look back in order to try to figure out what it means for us to move forward in a better and more holistic way. So with that in mind, we're going to go to that very familiar story in Matthew 2, verses 1 through 12. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, in the time of King Herod, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the one who was born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was alarmed, and all Jerusalem with him. After assembling all the chief priests and experts in the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they said, "for it is written this way by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are in no way least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod privately summoned the wise men and determined from them when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and look carefully for the child. When you find him, inform me so that I can go and worship him as well.' After listening to the king, they left, and once again the star they saw when it rose led them until it stopped above the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they shouted joyfully. As they came into the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother, they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasure boxes and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. After being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back by another route to their own country." Again, this is probably a very familiar story, even if you're not familiar with church things or with the Bible. This is a story that gets told or retold in some capacity very regularly this time of year. It's very familiar, probably. And yet, I want to draw out a few things that are maybe unfamiliar. 3 different things about this very familiar story that I think the author, Matthew, the biographer of Jesus, tucks in here as unfamiliar, as 3 surprises even, to draw our attention and for us today to try to figure out what was then and how can we do better going forward. So the first of these surprises is the main characters. Who is included is a complete surprise here. We might not often think of it this way, but unless you are of Jewish descent, this story, this anticipated coming of a king was not meant for you originally. It was not meant for us. It was the people of Israel who were waiting for their own king. Okay? So these stories that are handed down and shaping God's people to look and anticipate a king for hundreds of years, they were not originally meant for us. And yet Matthew, in his telling of the story of Jesus and the birth of Jesus, in the revealing of God unexpectedly coming in this baby, the first people who show up, the first people to whom Jesus is revealed are the wise men. Now, wise men kind of buries the lead a little bit. There's also translations, the 3 kings, we 3 kings of Orient are. These aren't kings. They might be wise men, but that kind of buries the lead in translation. The word that Matthew uses is magi. You've probably heard this word. Well, magi were not just kings. They were not just wise men. They were astrologers. Okay? They were not just looking at the sky and then, suddenly saw this star and decided they should follow it. They were not looking at God's beauty and then seeing this star and saying, we should go find that king. This is what they did. They were constantly looking up at the stars, trying to figure out what they said and what they should do with them. They were not religious people. They were not Jewish. And yet they were the ones who, because they were astrologers, who saw this star, made their way to Jerusalem, and they were the very first ones to whom God revealed himself in Jesus. On top of that, we have the wise men from the east. What does that mean? It means they're foreigners. Not only are they not religious, at least not religious in the Jewish sense, they're not Israelites. They're foreigners religiously, culturally. They weren't from that land. They were not meant to receive this promise. And yet in Matthew's telling, these outsiders, these dirty, despicable, unfamiliar people are the ones who get they get in on the secret first. This is the first surprise that happens in this story. Then there's another one. The second surprise is who the king is. When you imagine a king, what comes to mind? My guess is when these wise men, when these astrologers were picturing a king that they were going to go visit, they would imagine a castle of some sort, a throne of some sort, all the glitz and glam. And so they show up where they would expect a king to be. They follow the star to the palace. And the first royal interaction that they have is with a king. At that point, the king of Israel known as Herod. He has all of the trappings that you would expect from a king: the power, the prestige, the privilege. And yet, as we look at Herod and we look at his story and what unfolds, is that he might have the title of king, but he is feckless, he's anxious, he has all sorts of uncertainty, so much so that when he hears that this baby has been born, he throws a little toddler fit. He wants no other king, no other talk of another king. He throws a little toddler fit and then goes into a tirade, a genocidal tirade, where he kills actual toddlers to make sure that he doesn't lose his power. And he enlists the wise men, these astrologers, these magi, to try to do his bidding and tell him where he needs to go, or he needs to send his people to go. Now, we don't really know whether the wise men had any idea of what was actually going on here, or if they were just kind of looped into it. But they go and they follow the star. They go to Bethlehem. They find little toddler Jesus at this point. And when they arrive, he has none of the trappings that you would expect maybe from a king. But what they find in this toddler is power, prestige, privilege, everything that they actually could have hoped for in a king. They bow down, they give him these gifts, and then they go on their way, acknowledging that this little toddler, this poor little toddler, is the actual king, and the king who enlisted them to do his bidding, they flip the bird on the way out of town. That's surprise number 2 in this story, which leads directly into surprise number 3. Is how the story ends. Of course, after interacting with Jesus like this, after meeting the king, after bowing down and worshiping the king, they go back to their home and they tell everyone about Jesus. Everyone they know, friends, family, anybody they meet on the street, they tell all about Jesus, right? That's not how the story ends. Well, clearly, they met this Jesus, they met the king, they acknowledged him, they bowed down to him, they gave him all these gifts. Even if they didn't go and tell people, they had this radical life change. In that moment, they went home incredibly different people. That's not how the story ends either. The story of the Magi ends with them acknowledging Jesus as king, bowing down, giving him the gifts, skirting town to make sure they don't have to interact with Herod, and then they go about their way, and we never hear from them again. We have no idea what happens. They have a literal come to Jesus moment. And they go home, and we don't know if anything actually changed within them. That moment was important to them, and then it went back to normal. It's strange. It's anticlimactic. And maybe in the messiness of faith in life, it could be comforting. Because we are not always going to have those radical moments, even when we have them as following up come to Jesus moments. This is the surprise number 3 of this story and of the epiphany of the revealing of Jesus. Now, as we begin this new year, as we move into New Year's Day, that's a lot. That's a lot of information, a lot of different ways that you could go. And sometimes I will get up and I'll tell you, this is exactly what you need to know, exactly what you need to do with it. I don't do that very often, but sometimes I do. Well, here's 3 different things that you could take away from it, and I'm not going to tell you which one you need to take away today. Instead, I want you to imagine this like a spread that you might be going home to today for New Year's. You have family coming over, and all of these different things are laid out on the table. And all of them could be good. Some of them might look a little funky or disgusting, but they might be full of goodness in that very moment in which you need it. And so I want you to imagine today those 3 things being laid out in front of you, and for you to figure out what you need to fill your plate today and in the year ahead. Maybe it is that today or in the year ahead you need something unexpected. You need like your expectations to be interrupted. You need something that you thought didn't fit quite right, or you might even have like a strong aversion to. You might need the challenge to take that on, to even try it on, to figure out whether it fits or whether it has goodness within it that might be masked by the way it looks. Maybe like quinoa salad. Do you need quinoa salad this year? I encourage you to lean into that. How might God show up in unexpected ways and provide that goodness that you need? Maybe it is that you need something subversive. You need to be challenged, and you need to challenge others, or you need to challenge systems, or you need to challenge injustices. You need to step out and do this thing in order to make change in the world. It might be something familiar that you've embraced, and you just twisting it a little bit can make all of the subversive difference, like the way that a king looks. Maybe you need, rather than chicken wings, you need cauliflower wings. They're quite good. I'm having them today. Maybe you need that change in the year ahead. What do you need to do to challenge yourself and to challenge the powers that be? How can you be subversive in the year ahead? Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you, in this moment, in this year, are not looking for that. Maybe you don't need that unexpected challenge. Maybe what you need today and in this year is some comfort food. Maybe you need the knowledge of knowing that you are loved just as you are, and the thing that you need is the warmth of mac and cheese or that taste of barbecue chips. What is it that you need in the day ahead, in the year ahead, that provides that comfort in knowing that you are loved just as you are, even and especially in the mundaneness of everyday life? I will add to that plate one thing, because I am an adult, I am a parent, and sometimes we force our kids to take one thing on their plate. The one thing that I will add to your plate that I hope will not be masked looking like quinoa salad, but will actually be of interest to you, is something that's called a star word. So up here, we have a basket that is full of 150 different words. And they are on cards like this with a little star on it. And in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to come up here and choose a card. And we have enough cards here that if you want to choose a couple cards, you're welcome to. The idea behind this is that each of these cards has a word, and you grab it at random, and you try to use this word as we begin this new year, as we move towards Epiphany, the revealing of God, that you try to use this word as a star word that is, like the wise men, a guide for your year. So, for instance, you might draw welcome. And then you put it somewhere in your house, in your car, somewhere where you're going to see it regularly and be reminded, my guiding star for this year is welcome. What on earth does that mean? And you spend each day over the next week, month, year, trying to figure out what that means for you and to live into it. There are some unfamiliar words in here. Redamnancy. Anybody know what that is? I have no idea what it is. I Googled it last night, and I already forgot what it means. If you get redamnancy, Google it, and then try to figure out what it means for you today and this week and this month and this year. There are also some words in here that are in different languages. It tells you what language it is. It does not tell you what the word is. Again, this is why Google exists. So with this plate with this spread out in front of you, I welcome you to fill up your plate today and this week and this year with the things that you need in your life to grow goodness in yourself and in your world. That is my prayer for you. That is my prayer for us as a church, that you will find the ability to do that, and that you will choose to, quite honestly, explicitly, we choose that you will do that alongside us as we as a church seek to grow goodness in ourselves and in our world. So with that, we're going to have music here in a second. You're welcome to come forward at any time and grab a card or two or three.
We'll play this song as something you can reflect on before we go today. And as we're playing the song, you can come on up, grab a star word. And this is for kids too. So grown-ups, grab your kids, bring them forward. Everybody grab heart resound. We're still pursued by heaven's hound. Oh, lover, seek us till we're found. Our hope beyond all hope did come to call us each and every one to the surface of our consciousness. God dwells within and always has. Tomorrow's children seek our hearts. Will they know who they really are? The center of a thousand stars and the breathers of the breath of God. Our hope beyond our hope did come to call us each and every one to the surface of our consciousness. God dwells within and always has. This is why we sing at Christmas. God dwells within and always has.
Redamncy, the act of loving in return. Thank you, Grant. I confirmed it on Google, by the way. It was so good to be with you. What a great way to kick off this year. I know you could be doing so many other things on New Year's morning, including sleeping in, and yet you chose to wake up, get dressed, get here in order to worship with us. That is no small deal, and so I want to acknowledge how much I appreciate that. 3 quick things before we go on our way to enjoy the rest of this holiday and holiday weekend. The first is Beautiful Mess. Again, we kick off that new series next week. 4 weeks of looking at stories from the Bible of people who are complete train wrecks and end up being lifted up as heroes of the faith, and then sharing some of the stories from our own congregation of messy faith. We hope you'll join us for that. The next one is the birthday party immediately following worship. Next week, we'll have cupcakes and all that stuff. And then during the worship service, which we do not have a slide for, we have baptism. So baby Ivy, who was supposed to be baptized last month and then got RSV and we had to reschedule, she will be baptized next week. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. All right. So with that, I'm going to have you stand as you're able, and you can extend your hands to receive the blessing. This blessing is from The Work of Christmas by Howard Thurman. Yes, it is still Christmas, at least for a few more days. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among others, to make music in the heart. May that be so. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year too.
Jesus, Jesus.